Everett Epilepsy Advocates of America was first established as a nonprofit organization in 2014. Tell us, how did this begin?
We began speaking to nursing students in 2011, presenting a topic on exploring alternatives for treating epilepsy. As this progressed, we had a desire to take it farther, and so we established the nonprofit.
Right. What led you to move from a speaking work to become a full-fledged client support organization?
After we established our 501c3, some of our potential sponsors and funders expressed the desire to see us provide more individual client services, and so it naturally developed from there.
Well, many people don't understand just what all is involved in operating a nonprofit organization. I think when we say nonprofit, they just think, hey, we just do what we want to do, but that's not exactly the case. What is the annual cost for operating this organization?
Exactly. The annual cost, the first 2 years we did not reach our budget, but this year we've projected our budget at $50,000 to $60,000, and that's a bare essentials.
How did your funding challenges affect your work?
For the first 2 years, we weren't able to meet the budget, and so understandably, we weren't able to keep a full-time office open. That prevented us from providing direct client support, but we were able to provide some individual advocacy in the process and counseling services.
What type of advocacy have you offered?
One good example, several months back, we had a call from out of state. A client with epilepsy had experienced a seizure while she was at school, and she was in college. And as a result, the professor told her that she was going to have to drop that class. Now, that was a clear violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It resulted also in her, after dropping the class, she lost her financial aid. When we were contacted about that, we contacted the college's academic dean, and that decision was reversed.
Well, I'm sure that was a godsend for this young lady.
It definitely was. Many people, that may not be a big deal, but the difference of having a college degree and not having a college degree can make the difference of several $100,000 in income over a lifetime career.
Do you ever plan to offer direct support to the clients in this area?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, we've already written several grants, both locally as well as statewide, requesting to cover the expenses for providing direct client support.
Explain a little bit about the types of client support you plan to offer.
This will involve, this is very important for our clients because approximately 50% of people with epilepsy are unemployed. That makes it difficult to receive some of the medical treatment that is vital to their treatment. And our direct services will include assistance to see neurologists, some medical diagnostics such as EEGs and MRIs, and along those lines.
How many people are affected by epilepsy in this area?
By the statistics, we estimate about 400 people in Escambia County alone, and that number can go up to 500. That doesn't include individuals with non-epileptic seizure disorders as well, who we represent as well. In the extended area, which includes Mobile and Pensacola, that number could reach over 20,000.
With Escambia County being such a low population area, how can our region support an organization such as Epilepsy Advocates Association?
Okay. Over the last nearly 3 years of our existence, I've come to the conclusion that we may not be able to support in such a low population area, but we do have educational programs that are vital to the work, and we can continue to carry these programs out.
What type of educational programs do you plan to present?
The programs that we've done this year, we focused on high school students, teaching them how to respond to fellow students who have epilepsy or seizures, and this includes an anti-drug message as well, because drugs, illicit drugs, can cause seizures as well. This also includes, our programs include an epilepsy response initiative for first responders. We train police officers and firefighters how to properly identify and respond to seizure events. Also business and HR professionals, and also emerging medical professionals, nursing students, which we started along. We're also expanding that statewide.
What would you say are the key accomplishments with these programs?
When we first started several years ago, we only did just a handful of workshops every year. This year we've had some tremendous advancements, and that included about 55 individual workshops with all of these agencies that I just spoke about, reaching over 700 individual participants in the programs.
Well, since you've started with educational workshops, your programs have increased significantly. Do you plan to offer any more?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, we're working on several to begin this next year. This includes an epilepsy response workshop for school teachers, another response workshop for school nurses, and a sports concussion awareness prevention program for high school athletes, as well as, believe it or not, Little League parents. That's very important for them to understand.
Yes, it is. It is. Your website mentions that you promote both epilepsy support groups and an epilepsy support network. What is the difference?
Okay. The epilepsy support group is designed for individuals with epilepsy who are battling issues on a regular basis. It meets monthly, and it addresses these issues that epileptics have to deal with on a daily basis. Epilepsy Support Network is an extension of that, and it's not necessarily for someone who's facing it all the time, but we include not only just the patients, but family members, medical professionals as well. That meets once a quarter, and it provides personal as well as professional enrichment with special speakers at the program meetings.
How can our viewers learn more about joining a support group or a support network for epilepsy?
Okay, just go to our website, which is www.epilepsyadvocates.org, and go to the About tab of the menu. There's a drop-down link, and it will give you the opportunity to click on either one of those, and it will give you more information.
Tell us more about your First Responders program.
Yes, Epilepsy Response Initiative for First Responders is intended for police officers and firefighters. This has been very successful so far in the first year. We've trained over 100 police officers, and as well as volunteer firefighters and the East Brewton Fire Department here in town as well. And we hope to expand that next year as well.
Everett, why do you consider this program to be so important to your work?
First of all, let me say this. We hold our law enforcement officers in the highest esteem, and the amount of attack and criticism that they're under nationwide many times is uncalled for, and we don't want to be perceived as a part of the problem, but a part of the solution. Unfortunately, the clients that we represent from time to time, when they're having a seizure episode, may be misinterpreted by a police officer as being hostile or aggressive behavior. That can lead to an improper response. Sometimes that can cause physical harm, and in rare cases lead to death. I don't know if you remember, about a month ago, there's a well-known case in California that took place in which a woman called for help for her brother who was having a seizure, and when the response arrived, they interpreted him as acting aggressively and erratically. He was shot and killed as a result.
Yes.
And that's what we do. We teach the police officers how to identify a seizure episode,
Right,
and how to correctly respond.
Have you provided this training to all of our first responders in this area?
We haven't reached them all yet, but this past year we provided this training for the Escambia County, Alabama Sheriff's Department. We provided for the Atmore Police Department and Fire Department, the East Brewton Fire Department, and I think I've already mentioned the Sheriff's Department. And we hope to reach out to the remaining of our local first responders in the upcoming year.
Why are you so passionate about epilepsy awareness?
I think the short answer for that would be because I've been there. I battled it for 30 years before it's corrected, and that started when I was a young child, and so I've seen just about every major spectrum of living with epilepsy as a child, as an adolescent, and into my adulthood as well.
How common is this medical condition?
Epilepsy is the fourth most common neurological disorder behind stroke, Alzheimer's, and migraine headache. It affects approximately 3 million people throughout the United States. 1 in 10 people will be diagnosed with a seizure in their lifetime. 1 in 25 will be diagnosed with epilepsy.
And how many people would you say are affected in Alabama?
By the statistics, we would estimate about 40,000 people, and that could go all the way up to 50,000.
And this condition is so confusing to many people. How can you explain it?
In short, epilepsy is a problem with the brain that causes recurring seizures. In effect, it is an electrical firestorm in the brain. And the severity of these attacks, which are called seizures, will be determine how long the person is affected by the seizure. Let me give you a little illustration. About 10 years ago, we bought an old house to renovate and did some rewiring. I replaced a electrical breaker box, and when it came time for Alabama Power to come out and turn it on, when the switch was flipped, and when he connected it, lights began to flicker all over the house, on and off. Well, we shut it off, and I discovered that I had not connected the two bus bars on both sides of the box together. And that's basically what, and once we corrected that problem, the lights worked fine. That's what happens in the body. Our brain is like an electrical breaker box that controls the body. And when it misfires, it can affect different parts of the body depending on how much of the brain is affected.
And how long do these effects last?
Depending on the type of seizure. If it's a simple partial seizure, people around you may not even know that you've had a seizure. It can cause momentary lapse of awareness. It can cause just a little nausea in your stomach. Or if it goes to a full-blown grand mal seizure, which is now referred to as a tonic-clonic seizure, the effects of that can last, causing confusion, headache, memory loss as well, anywhere from a couple of hours to several days.
And is it painful?
Yes, for a tonic-clonic seizure, a full-blown seizure, that can be very painful. And what I like to tell people is that I wouldn't wish a grand mal seizure on your worst enemy.
You said this is the fourth most common neurological condition. How does it impact our nation?
Economically, if you look at half of this population not being able to hold down a job, it impacts economically about $15.5 billion is taken out of our national economy annually in lost wages and medical expenses and insurance fees.
Let's discuss for a moment the sudden unexplained death in epilepsy, referred to as SUDEP.
Yes. SUDEP is sudden unexplained death in epilepsy. Approximately 50,000 people die annually from epilepsy. Many times it can be in their sleep, and it can be related to other situations such as a driving or swimming accident. But it's more common than a lot of people realize. In fact, you shared with me that this personally touched your own family as well.
Yes, we lost a daughter, our youngest daughter, to epilepsy. She was a 38-year-old mother, and she had epilepsy starting after the birth of her second child, and he was in middle school. And she was asleep one morning when they went to school, and they didn't wake her up. They had an older child that was, in high school, and you didn't wake Mom up if she was asleep, because most of the time she had been up.
Yes.
After a seizure. Didn't wake her up, and my oldest grandson came home and found that she had passed away in her sleep due to complications from epilepsy.
Yes. And this is something that the public needs to be made aware of, because they don't realize that epilepsy can cause death, and it personalizes it for families out there that are battling with this. Most seizures that are well controlled with medication or other controlling subjects, the person is not a candidate for SUDEP or sudden unexplained death, but for the people who have trouble controlling the seizures, it's very important that they understand or realize the possibility of this happening. In fact, when I was battling my worst part of the case about 15 years ago, the doctor asked me, what side I was sleeping on, and I was a stomach sleeper. And he told me I needed to change those habits, and it took a while to change that, and even to this day I don't sleep on my stomach anymore, although that's over, because what can happen is a person who begins to seize into sleep, sometimes they can smother in the pillow.
Right, I have heard of that happening. Also, she had seizures from 9 different areas of her brain, so she was not a candidate for surgery.
Exactly.
And that makes a difference as well. Mm-hmm. And also, medications. You take so much medication over so many years. Medications are good, but they also can affect your body.
Yes, that's the problem with the medications. Years ago, there were fewer options for medications, just a handful when I was growing up. There are 26 different types, and there may be a newer one out right now, but about 26 different types of anti-epileptic drugs. Every one of them has some type of side effect. Some of the older ones have more toxic side effects, not as bad as they are today. But the doctors who treat epilepsy, neurologists or neuroepileptologists, the goal is to find out what is causing the problems, the problem in the brain, so that they can treat it and get them off as much medicine as possible.
Going back to the unemployment issue, why is this unemployment number so high with people who have epilepsy?
That's a very complex issue. It starts with the fact that many people with epilepsy are unable to drive. They're unable to function under high stress, and so that can cause, depending on the type of job they have as well, that can cause more stress in the workplace. Another factor is when the employer or supervisor reacts inappropriately and discriminates or harasses the person because of the condition.
Is harassment and discrimination common in epilepsy patients?
Yes, it is. In fact, this past April, we did a nationwide survey of individuals with epilepsy, and the results showed that about 58% of people that we surveyed experienced workplace discrimination. 30% of those that were surveyed had lost at least one job due to discrimination by the employer. 16% had been harassed because of epilepsy, and then sadly 14% did not feel that the HR department or upper management had responded appropriately or taken their concerns seriously.
One of the goals of Epilepsy Advocates of America is to see that workplace harassment and discrimination disappear. Why is this still so prevalent?
Let's go back to that last part of that equation that I mentioned. In the workplace, from my personal experience, I think that most of the time that harassment or discrimination takes place is because of ignorance on the part of the supervisor as to the condition, or perhaps personal biases.
When you were still battling your seizures, was your personal experience with your employers positive?
For the most part, I had a very positive relationship with most of my employers through the years. The majority of them responded appropriately. They were very empathetic to my needs and were able to accommodate when I had a seizure. But there were several instances when I did experience both harassment and discrimination. On one case, the employer told me that I was a liability to the organization. A second one, when the supervisor found out that we had a great relationship, but about 6 months into the job, I experienced a bad seizure, and when he found out about it the next day, I needed to go home because I was still weak.
Yes.
And I tried to go to work, but he told me that I had lied on my application. That was an inappropriate way to respond. From there on, our relationship went downhill, and in a way, I was forced out of that job.
I was going to say, that's my next question. How did this affect your job?
Yes, when harassment takes place in the workplace, not just with epilepsy, but with any medical condition, it causes more stress. That leads to unproductivity in the workplace, but particularly for people with epilepsy, this can cause more problems with having seizures because one of the major triggers for seizures is stress.
What advice would you give to an employer who is a bit skeptical about hiring or retaining an employee who has seizures?
For that question, I want to go back to an interview I had with John O'Hurley, actor in Hollywood, this past spring, and I asked him that question as well. His response was classic, and he alluded to the employer having a high-tech computer. If you go out and invest in an expensive computer system, on occasion it's still going to freeze up, it's going to get overloaded. Do you as the employer throw that computer out and go buy a new one? Of course not. You allow it to cool off, or you find out what's causing the problem, the hang-up, and you're able to utilize it. And that's how employers should respond with someone with epilepsy or any other neurological deficit as well. On occasion, they may have a brain overload, so to speak, and it may cause a temporary disruption. And so it's important to recognize that these these employees with epilepsy are a true asset as well. In fact, some of the most well-known people in the United States, the Supreme Court Justice, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, has epilepsy, but that did not hold him back. When he was diagnosed about 10 years ago, he's still been able to effectively perform his job as well.
Very interesting. For the patient who is suffering uncontrollable seizures, what treatments are available today?
Okay, the first line of defense, what we've already talked about, is anti-epileptic drugs. Approximately 30% of individuals with epilepsy are not able to achieve that seizure control, and so there are several more options available today. The first of those beyond that is what we refer to as therapeutic device implants. We have a vagus nerve stimulator, or VNS, that's implanted in the chest, and it goes to the vagus nerve, and it responds somewhat like a heart pacemaker. There's also the responsive neurostimulator, and then trigeminal nerve stimulator. All of these devices are implants. The trigeminal nerve stimulator can be worn on the outside of the body as well, an external device. They all work differently, but they all have the same common objective, and that is to stop the seizures.
If a patient is not a good fit for one of these devices, what about other treatments?
Yes, there are others. The treatments are limited. One of the most well-known is dietary therapy. The ketogenic diet has been around for decades, and over the last 10 or 15 years, neurologists have discovered that the modified Atkins diet works in helping to achieve seizure control as well. Another one of the later hot topics in news is medical marijuana, which there are two forms. There's the CBD oil, which is low in the psychoactive element called THC, and then there are some states that are experimenting with a comprehensive medical marijuana act. Our philosophy with Epilepsy Advocates of America is that we don't endorse the comprehensive medical marijuana acts because we feel that they can lead to more abuse of drugs.
Yes.
But the CBD oil, that's a very tremendous advancement. The clinical trials are showing positive responses and with little side effects, and so that they show some promising results.
Well, I wish we had more time to discuss all of these treatments because there are so many things available that was not 15 years ago when my daughter was having so much trouble. But for the listener and the viewer, if you want to learn more about these treatments and this educational material, do you have this on the website?
Yes, ma'am. We have resources on our website. Go back to www.epilepsyadvocates.org. We have several tabs, go through the entire menu process, but specifically articles. We have different articles on the various types of treatment, and then we have one entitled medical, and it goes through all of these options that we just discussed and goes into more detail about those treatments.
Well, Everett, I know you are a very strong advocate for epilepsy brain surgery. How can you be so strongly in favor of such a radical procedure?
Good question. I experienced 3 procedures myself, and at first, the first time that the doctor presented the possibility to me, I was terrified at the thought of my head being opened up. And interestingly, all 3 neurologists that were involved in this process told me on 3 separate occasions, it'll be a breeze. And in retrospect, it was. There were some very uncomfortable moments in the process, especially when I woke up, with this extreme hangover from the headache, but from the surgery. But looking back, first of all, most people that have surgery don't have to go through 2 or 3 surgeries. I know one individual who had 4 brain surgeries and had nearly half of her right brain removed, and she was an inspiration to me and encouraging me to pursue mine. But to the person who is considering the possibility of brain surgery and they may be hesitating, I would encourage them to outweigh the risks versus the benefits. The risk of any surgery, there is an element of risk in any surgery,
Right.
anytime you're taken under, but for epilepsy surgery, that's a relatively low risk compared to the risks involved in cavity surgeries. And so I would say, understand that this is a very common procedure today, and the doctors are very well prepared to perform this surgery, and in a sense, it's a routine procedure. And don't be afraid to do it if the doctor recommends it.
Can you tell us a bit about what they did in your surgeries?
Yes, actually two of the procedures were resections, and the other one was what is referred to as an invasive monitoring. Let me explain those. The first surgery was technically called an amygdalo-hippocampectomy. That's a mile-long word. But in essence, what that was, they removed the amygdala and hippocampus in the right temporal lobe, and also about 3 different smaller portions of the cerebral cortex, the main brain. Later on, after the seizures returned, I was seizure-free for about 7 months. I went back in for intracranial monitoring, in which that's a surgical procedure in which electrodes are either one implanted on the brain or a grid is laid on top of the brain, and that's the grid electrode is what they did for me. And that gives them a closer picture of specifically where the seizures are coming from. 7 days later, they went back in and removed further portions, and they went deeper into the right temporal lobe.
Well, as you stated, you were seizure-free for the first 7 months after the first surgery, but unfortunately they returned, made it necessary to go back and do it again.
Yes.
How do you use that to encourage others who might be considering this procedure?
Again, looking at the benefits versus the risks, when someone, their life is so disrupted by epilepsy that they can't function, it's time to explore other alternatives. Don't be afraid of the doctor's recommendation. Look for a highly reputable location. There are approximately 200 comprehensive epilepsy centers, treatment centers in the United States. And even right here in Alabama, we have a state-of-the-art facility in Birmingham, that's UAB Kirkland Clinic. And also at USA, they have an epilepsy program there as well.
I did not realize there was one at USA.
Yes, it's a very highly qualified. In fact, Dr. Juan Ochoa, the associate professor at USA in neurology, is on our advisory council.
Well, not all neurologists deal with seizures and epilepsy.
Exactly.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. If someone is experiencing uncontrolled seizures and you're not seeing a neurologist, I highly recommend finding a neurologist, and particularly one that does specialize in treatment. Not every neurologist specializes in epilepsy.
That's
those
right.
are referred to as epileptologists.
Right.
Now, my neurologist in Pensacola was not an epileptologist, but he did have a strong interest in treating epilepsy. And interestingly, he was the one that tested me and discovered that I was a good candidate for the surgery. And so if your neurologist does have training and a strong interest in your work, don't be afraid to use one, even though they're not a neuroepileptologist.
Well, that answers some questions to me, because we did go through several
Yes.
that before we found something that was a good fit, and probably was not as good as I would like for it to have been.
And then something else that you said made me think of another aspect. A neurologist, if you're looking for a neurologist to treat your medical condition, you can go online, of course, but if you make a telephone call, sometimes a neurologist might refer you to another one.
Another one.
Right.
Everett, it is your desire to see Epilepsy Advocates of America become regional, even national influence as an advocacy organization. What is your plan to get from here to there?
Well, every large business must have a foundation. Any house has to have a foundation, and that's where we're at. We're at the foundational stage right now, and so we're going to continue building right here in South Alabama. This year we actually expanded some of our programs statewide, and we are looking into the possibility of opening an advocacy office in Greenville, South Carolina.
This was a major discussion at our recent Board of Directors meeting.
Yes. In fact, it was. It's important to understand that although I'm the executive director, I can't make every decision. And so I asked the Board of Directors at the last meeting to approve us exploring the possibility of opening such an office in the upstate.
Such an office would include the same services that we discussed earlier in the interview for our own geographic region. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, it is. In fact, the very same services that we'll provide to our clients here in South Alabama, the only difference on a much larger scale.
What makes you so interested in Greenville, South Carolina as another location?
Okay, I was raised in Greenville, South Carolina. This is my hometown, Brewton, but after college I returned to Brewton. And what I like about South Carolina is that it's a high population area. It has a level 4 comprehensive epilepsy treatment center, and at present there are no epilepsy treatment services or support services an advocacy office such as ours, and I think for those reasons it would make it a very good location to provide our services and expand from there.
How could a work so far away benefit the epilepsy advocates in South Alabama?
Well, because of the large concentration of the population and also the professional development in upstate South Carolina, we're already looking at several professionals to join our advisory council in the area, and the contribution that they provide to our program can greatly benefit the work that we provide for our local citizens here.
What role does the advisory council contribute to your work?
My philosophy is King Solomon's proverb when he said, "In the multitude of counsel there is safety. Where there is no counsel, the people will fail." And that's one of my major creeds. And one day when we look back, if we see a large successful organization as Epilepsy Advocates of America, it's not going to be because of what I've done, but because of the several dozen advisory council members and board of directors that are much smarter than myself.
Could you tell us who all are on the advisory council?
Yes, ma'am. We have about 2 dozen right now. You can go to the website and look under the leadership tab, but this consists of professionals in the law enforcement community, in the medical community. We have several neurologists as well. We have several educators, Dr. Varner here in town, and we have a nursing coordinator in Greenville, South Carolina. Additionally, we have some marketing professionals and public communications consultants as well.
Everett, as someone whose family has been directly affected by epilepsy, I want to thank you for the work that you have done to benefit the local people in this area, because when Stephanie was diagnosed, we didn't have anything like that. I mean,
Yes.
I looked, and this has just been a godsend to the people in this area, and I'm just looking for great things to happen with this.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate you. I appreciate our board of directors, and I appreciate the advisory council members here in town. I didn't mention every one of them, but every one of our advisory council and board of directors play an integral part in our work, and no matter how insignificant they may feel, even if we only get together and discuss one issue during the year or 2 or 3 times, their input will help us increase the services and the quality of our support that we provide to the patients here in town. And I thank you again so much for your contribution to the work.
And you're quite welcome. God bless.
Thank you, and Lord bless you.